Welcome everyone to our Kitty World Travelers panel. We're so excited to be with you today and talk about what is at least one of my favorite topics in the entire world, how to travel with your cat. So not just adventure with your cat, not just take them outside, but take them on vacations or take them to visit family, really take adventure to the next level. So I'm joined by some really amazing cat travelers, Rihanna, Holly, and Dan, and their fluff babies. I have my cat right here. This is Raja. My name is Jenny. Raja has come with me all across the continental United States and internationally. We are actually in Mexico right now. So he really is quite the kitty world traveler. I think he's been on an airplane more than most humans I know. And I think that some of our other panelists here today can say the same. So I would love for people that are joining us, tuning in, if you can introduce yourselves in the chat, maybe say what you're hoping to learn from this session, or maybe share any travel stories you've had so far with your cats. And then we'll have our panelists introduce ourselves now. So guys, if you could each take turns just saying who you are and why you started traveling with your cat, how long you've been traveling with them, and maybe share the longest or most exciting journey you've had.
So, hi everybody. My name is Dan Nguyen. This is Sponge Cake. We're from Sponge Cake _ the Scottish Fold. We live here in New York City. I got two of my other cats with me, and they're just around. So we take them traveling. Let's see. My wife and I, we got them during the pandemic, and so we wanted to, we traveled before the pandemic. When we got out of the pandemic, we wanted to travel with them. We started taking them places with us. And so the first place we took them was Orlando, Florida. So from New York to Orlando. And then we thought, well, why don't we just, since they handled Orlando so well, we took them to Europe. And so they've been to like a few places in Europe. And so that's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. Rihanna, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rihanna. I am the mom of 6 cats. 2 of them are flying through this room back and forth. So there's Toffee, Brulee, Maya, Ollie, Oakley, and Opal. Toffee, Brulee, and I used to fly. We lived in Los Angeles, and our whole family was back on the East Coast by Boston, New Hampshire. So we would fly back and forth all the time. So me and my 2 little girls. And then during the pandemic, all 6 of us moved across the country. So I loaded up an RV with 6 former feral cats and we drove across the country. And now we are back in New Hampshire.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
At Twin Torties. Sorry, that's us.
Twin Torties. Holly's still having internet trouble. So let's go to Caitlin and her kitty Wiz. Caitlin, can you please introduce yourself? Talk about how long you've been traveling.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Caitlin. I'm Adventure Cat Wiz on Instagram. We recently got a second cat, Margot. She's kind of afraid of the outdoors right now, but we're working on it, training her to get ready to go outside. We have been traveling really ever since I found Wiz as a feral kitten. Every time I kind of left him alone, he would get spicy again. So I just started taking him everywhere. We've gone on countless flights now, and Wiz has traveled to 5 different states. Oh, and we're located in Tempe, Arizona. I don't know if I said that.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, Holly, I see you gesturing at the camera. Are we connected?
Okay, hi, I'm Holly. This is Totoro. We're from SoCal, and we are starting our Latin America trip. So we're starting in Mexico. We just got to Mexico City 3 weeks ago, and we actually met Jenny here. So this is just the beginning of our journey. I think it would take us maybe 1 or 2 years to tour all of Latin America. So we'll see.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So we're going to start with talking about some air travel tips. We're going to discuss some very general tips that could be applied in whatever country you are living in or visiting. But then we're going to transition talking more specifically about international travel, because that's a whole nother level of complication when it comes to moving around with your animals. So let's chat first about just general air travel tips. So Caitlin, I know that you were saying you've brought Wiz to 5 different states so far. What are some of the number 1 tips you would share with people who want to travel on an airplane with their cat for the first time?
I will say check and double check the carrier size dimension standards that you can have. I almost had a scare where my carrier was like half an inch too big and they almost didn't let me take him. But luckily it was not a booked flight. They just let me go anyways. So I ended up going and getting the transporter immediately after that, because that's definitely airline safe. Have all of your cat's things in one spot. So a lot of times if you're bringing kitty litter with you on a flight, they're going to want to test the kitty litter for any substances, and any food also has to come out of your carry-on bag. So either check it. I like to put it in my carry-on so that I can have it easy access if I need it. But make sure it's just all together in one spot so you're not holding up the TSA line, getting everything out to get it all tested. I will also say, I know a lot of people do this. I usually just take Wiz through the metal detector with me, just holding him. But I know some people get nervous about that. And if you have multiple cats, that could be pretty risky. You don't want to accidentally lose your cats. So you can request a private screening room as well and just let your cats go in there and they'll do everything that they need to do. And yeah, I always have a travel litter box folded up inside my suitcase as well. So as soon as we get to our location, I can find him a quiet place, open it up, let him do his business, and then we can go on our way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's talk about flying with multiple cats. Dan, you have 3 and Rihanna, you have 6. Oh my gosh, 1 is enough for me. I would love to hear your tips though about flying with multiple cats. I know from my experience, you normally need to have 1 person per animal in cabin. So how do you navigate moving with so many animals at once?
So yes, Dan here. So it's you have to call the airlines. Every airline is going to have a different policy on it, and so not all airlines will allow more than 1 pet per person. And so I travel with my wife, and my wife is the one that handles all the social media stuff. I kind of just can't carry the cats around and provide the free labor. So that's what's going on. But with respect to the airlines, yes, if you want to bring them in the cabin with you, you're gonna have to buy essentially 1 ticket per person, from my experience. Otherwise, they might have like a hold style or something like that. We can put them in, but we prefer to take our cats with us. And so when we travel with 3 cats with 2 people, it essentially means we need to buy 3 plane tickets.
From my experience, can you hear me?
Yep.
From my experience, I had Toffee and Brulee. I've never flown with all 6 because they are all also former ferals, and that would be one spicy flight. But Toffee and Brulee and they're like my more kind of like adventure-y girls. So I would put them both, Brulee, never mind. I would put them both into 1 carrier together because they were so small that they were allowed to do that. And Dan's right, it depends on the airline that allows you to do this. I believe we did Southwest when we were doing that, but you also just like call and just confirm all of this. They were small enough, but they will check to make sure that they can like stand up and have enough space in the carrier. You're not like shoving all your cats into one thing. But another time, and that was for me. So they were together in 1 carrier at my feet, and I had to pay per carrier, not per cat for that. And then the other time when I flew with 4 kittens, I actually sent my mom on the plane with the 4 kittens. It's that picture that I have on my Instagram of them in the little TSA box together.
The cutest picture ever. So follow all of our panelists on Instagram, by the way, because their travel cat photos are next level. I love this picture of the kittens going through TSA. It's adorable. Sorry to interrupt.
4 teeny tiny kittens, and they were so small, but their new homes were in New Hampshire. We were in Los Angeles when we found them outside. And so they were so small, they were in ferret harnesses because they were just like mice. And so all 4 of them were able to go into 1 carrier as well, but that also depended on the airline. So we spent probably days, weeks, just figuring out like what airline was going to allow this and making sure they had the right paperwork so that things would go smoothly at the airport for that. And again, we paid per carrier for that one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I want to address travel anxiety with your cats when they're going on planes. The number of times I've had people ask me if my cat is sedated because he's so calm. please don't sedate your cats, first of all, unless your vet explicitly tells you to. Please avoid that. But I'd love to hear everyone's tips about how to keep your cat calm while they're traveling, and if they've ever, started feeling anxious on an airplane or at the airport, what you've done to help calm them down and make them more comfortable. Caitlin, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for Wiz is that I'm visible to him. I usually am visible. I try not to leave him anywhere. There was one time I had to pee so bad on the plane. And so I just left him underneath the seat and I just went up and went to the bathroom, and I could hear him screaming from the bathroom. It was so embarrassing. But as soon as I came back, I just opened up the bag a little bit and I gave him a pet. I let him know it was okay. So yeah, for me, just stay visible. They don't want to feel like they're abandoned. They don't know where they are. It's a little scary. If your flight attendants are cool and there's an open seat next to you, they will let you sometimes they've let me put Wiz in the seat next to me again, so he's closer to me, more visibility. It's really flight attendant discrepancy on if you can do that or not. But that's always my best tip. Keep them as close to you as possible.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Holly, I know that Totoro is a somewhat new traveler, but he's already taking the world by storm. What tips can you share about making sure that he's calm and comfortable in his new environments? Holly, are you connected?
Sure. Yeah, can you ask the question again?
Yes. So I was saying, I know Totoro is a somewhat new traveler, but he's already taking the world by storm.
Hello?
So
Hello?
you have, could you share your tips for how you keep him calm and comfortable in his new environments?
So when he normally goes to a new place, he'll hide under the bed. But but our first trip when we first arrived, he hid under the bed for 3 days. And then after 2 weeks, I had to move to a different place. And he hid under the bed for only 3 hours. So it was a big improvement over 3 days to 3 hours. And I don't force him out from under the bed. I'll pet him and I'll reassurance every hour or so. And he eventually came out on his own. Never forced your cat to come out from under the bed or some sort of hiding space.
How did he do on his first flight recently from LA to Mexico City?
So he was fine in his navigator. I put it under the seat. It barely fit, but I squished it in. But it wasn't until we ascended, the plane was already in the air, when he started yelling. So I had a sling pouch carrier across my chest, and I just took him out and put him in a sling pouch, and then I zipped my jacket over him so he couldn't see anything, and he immediately calmed down. I was afraid the flight attendants wouldn't let me do it, but they would prefer, a quiet cat over a loud cat. So they were okay with it.
I've definitely kept my cat on my lap at certain points. When he is flying as an emotional support animal, which unfortunately is not really a thing in the United States anymore, but it is still a thing in some other countries. So you can always check. Emotional support animals are allowed to be on your laps. Carry-on pets, which is how the majority of you would fly with your cat, they're supposed to stay in their carrier the whole time technically. But I think if your cat is pretty well behaved and isn't going to jump around, I've never had a flight attendant give me trouble for having the cat sit on my lap for a little bit. And I found that helps calm him down, definitely. And he loves looking out the window too, which makes for very cute photos. So let's talk about international travel as well, because when you're flying internationally with your cat, you already have all the things you have to consider for normal air travel in terms of getting them through TSA, having them feel comfortable at the airport and on the airplane. But then you have to go through customs paperwork, sometimes extra vaccines, all these other things to consider. So Dan, you were saying that you've taken your 3 cats to Europe. Oh my gosh, I've never taken my cat overseas. What is that experience like? What do people need to know if they're going to fly overseas with their cats?
Right. Yeah. So, and It's going to depend on the country. You gotta do your research on the receiving country as to what the requirements are going to be with respect to bringing cats in. Every country is going to be different, and even in the EU, where they're supposed to have like a unified set of rules that govern EU countries, each country is going to do it differently. So our experience to, let's say, Italy versus Amsterdam or the Netherlands versus Paris, France, were different. Even though they all follow the same EU rules. So the paperwork that you will need to get basically means going to your vet and asking for a health certificate that is endorsed by the US government. And the tricky part is that the endorsement of the health certificate needs to occur within 10 days of when you travel with your cat to the destination country. So there's like kind of like a scramble, as your veterinarian is preparing the paperwork, which entails which includes all of their like vaccination records and health records and all of that sort of thing. That will need to be presented to the customs officials in the country that you're going to. But in the EU, each country enforces it differently. So, for example, when we went to France or Italy, nobody really cared. They just took our vaccination records and they just accepted it. We're good to go. We went to Amsterdam. They wanted to see it, and I think they would have turned us back if we did not have a signed health certificate. So that's something that to be cognizant of. Additionally, so since we're going to the EU, there's a special EU pet passport that you can get. So we actually got pet passports from France in Paris for all three of our kitties, so they can travel pretty easily now within Europe. So that's another thing to consider. Essentially, again, just research the country's requirements and then have that paperwork available.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So let's transition to starting to talk about hotels. I love staying at a hotel with my cat. My cat loves being in new places. So the first thing he does is just climb on everything and explore and sniff every single corner of a hotel room. But there's definitely things to take into consideration. Finding a hotel that's not only pet friendly, but specifically cat friendly. Oh my gosh, the number of places that say they're pet friendly. And then when you clarify, they're like, actually, I just meant dogs. That's a challenge in itself. And then of course, helping your cat feel comfortable in this new space. So Rihanna, I know that you have some tried and true tips about how you help your cats feel comfortable in hotels. Can you share with the group, please?
So for starting off, I think it's really important to not only research hotels when you're traveling, like for fun travel, but I also think it's important to know pet-friendly hotels in like your area in case you live in an area that might need to be evacuated or anything like that due to like fires or hurricanes or something like that. So always having a list of cat-friendly hotels. Oh my gosh, Brule is joining us. Cat-friendly hotels in your area, I think is important. A way that I help my cats whenever we travel and go through hotels is we kind of start off in a smaller space. So I will bring them kind of like into the bathroom and set them up there so they can kind of get used to the smells, the sounds, like what's going on, but not feel too overwhelmed by the area. Again, this depends on if your cat's a little more timid or a little more outgoing. Another thing that I love to pack, this is the Travel Cat Boop Coop. It collapses. Brule is going to be like, that's mine. It collapses all the way down and folds, but then it opens up and it can like have a screen on all the sides. So your cat can kind of just like hang out in here, feel safe, but get to know the smells of the hotel room as well. I also think it's important to, when you get there, check under the bed or like under any couches that there are, because sometimes you know how the beds have those little things, but there's like a hole. You don't want your cat to be able to get anywhere you can't get to them. So you might need to shove a pillow in there or something like that beforehand as well. And we also bring Feel Away spray everywhere we go. So we spray the Feel Away spray all the time, just like a calming spray seems to work really well. And leaving them our clothing and their blankets, just familiar things of theirs, is helpful. We also bring our own blanket to put on top of the bed because some hotels are kind of like, don't put your pet on the bed, don't get their fur on the bed. So we'll bring our own throw blanket for that.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I love your tip too, to always be aware of places nearby in your location that are cat friendly, just in case. I will say I tend to be a little bit of a hotel snob. I like boutique properties. And typically, if it is an individually owned property, I've found in my personal experience, even if they haven't hosted cats before, they tend to be a little more flexible about welcoming cats if you assure them that they're well trained and they're not going to scratch and pee on everything. So if it's an independent hotel that's not part of a large chain, it's definitely worth having a conversation, even if they say initially they're not sure about welcoming cats. It's very possible that they might make an exception for you. But if you need something in your back pocket, La Quinta Inn and Suites across the world, I think, but certainly across the United States, they are all very cat friendly. That's one of my go-to hotels to stay at if if I need to stay near an airport, either for a late night or early morning flight. All La Quinta Inns accept cats and other animals as well. So that's a good one to have in your back pocket. The rest of our group, Caitlin, Dan, Holly, what are some of your hotel tips, or maybe the best, most interesting hotel experience you've had with your cat?
So I really like to bring, I have it right next to me, the accordion scratcher. I leave it out all the time. You can see that's really beat up right now. This is really handy because everyone's cats love to scratch. And this gives them, it has their scent on it. They know it. It folds up really, really tiny. I'm not going to fold it up right now. But I have a demo of it on my Instagram if you want to look at it. It folds up really, really tiny, and they know it. They love it. And so they're more inclined to scratch that and damage that that's meant to be damaged than anything else in the room. Even if you're visiting family and they don't have cats, they don't have scratchers, definitely bring along something for them to be able to get that energy out on.
Awesome. Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. So bringing scratchers, anything like their toys, stuff like that they're already used to, would be great. But the first thing that I do when I get to the hotel room is I actually want to make sure for any type of dangers that I'm not familiar with. So I go into the bathroom and I check under the sinks, like, behind it. Can they get into these little crawl spaces that might be behind the sink? Are there any holes in the wall, like under the sink, that they can like get it into? Hotels are not always like super careful about that. And so what I do is I kind of take like, towels or whatever, and I stuff it in there so that they can't get into these dusty areas or something like that. So I like to do that. And then I bring my own food for them, and, stuff that they're already used to when they're back at home. So try to recreate the environment for them as much as possible so that they're as comfortable as possible. It's good.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'd love to transition into answering some of the questions we've received in the chat. So I'm seeing one question from Caroline that says, is there ever an issue with bringing cat food into a different country? I know personally I've had issues receiving catnip products in the mail to Mexico, because catnip is considered a plant and you cannot import plant products from other countries. But in my experience, as long as wet food is unopened, that hasn't been a problem, and I've never had a problem with dry food. But has anyone else, have you guys had any issues with bringing food or other cat products with you when you travel?
Yeah, I personally haven't. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The only thing I've ever gotten stopped for, again, like Caitlin said, is litter. Going through the airport, they checked my litter. I was like, it's gonna smell really fresh when you open that one.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, as long as I think it's unopened, it should be okay for the wet food.
And even with dry food, I've only flown domestically in the US, but I've never had an issue even with open dry food containers. Usually I buy wet food when I get to my location, but I usually take just enough dry food for a day.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I will say I typically I bring my own food. I bring my food for my cats, but I typically don't fly with litter because it just adds so much weight. For me, I like to pack different things that makes my cat comfortable, and that takes up a lot of space and weight in my suitcase. So I'm always trying to trim down things that I can get in my next destination. And so I don't want to gamble that I won't be able to find his food somewhere, but I know for a fact I'll be able to find kitty litter. My cat is not particularly picky when it comes to the litter he uses. So that's one way that I can kind of cut down on weight. We had another question that I saw in the chat that I did already answer, but in case anyone missed it, it was, if you have TSA pre-check, can you still go through the pre-check line with your cat? And the answer is absolutely. And I'm one of those people that if I have pre-check, well, I have pre-check, I certainly do. But if I'm traveling with a friend who doesn't, I'll usually, you know, wait in the normal line with them. I don't ditch my friend, except if I have my cat, they can fend for themselves. I'm taking my cat through pre-check. So we have a shorter wait. So yeah, I would definitely recommend actually getting TSA pre-check if you have your cat, because it makes things so much easier. You don't have to take your shoes off. You don't have to take your laptop out of the bag. And it's just one less hassle to worry about when traveling with your cat.
I would
Let's see.
second that
Oh.
too, Jenny, because the pre-check saves my life, especially when I have one of these in one hand and the other in another hand. Just being able to have your bag just go through and then their carrier go through without thinking about all the other stuff is amazing. So I definitely recommend pre-check if you plan on traveling with your cat.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm looking through. We have time for just a couple more questions. Let's see. Oh, Andre wants to know, I think this is for you, Caitlin. What was your scratcher called? What scratcher is that you were showing us?
It is the accordion scratcher, and I did add the link into the chat. I can send it again if you need it.
Okay, awesome. So if anyone has any other questions, you can, oh, I see something just came up on the Q&A. Is it possible to, so Natalia's asking, she has 2 kittens. Is it possible to travel 1 human, 2 cats, or would I have to find a second person to fly with? Rihanna, you were saying that you were able, just as 1 person, to travel with 2 kittens, correct?
Yep, and absolutely. And you can reach out to me on Twin Torties if you want like specifications on that. But I used to travel with this one and her twin sister, who thinks it's dinner time right now, even though it's not, all the time. So they've been on over 20 flights, the 2 of them in 1 carrier with just their mom, me.
Awesome. So someone, Gabby has asked, how long of a flight requires an in-flight litter box break? I personally, I try and get my cat to use the bathroom before we get on the plane. And luckily he is in a good age and good health where he's able to hold it. So my cat has never used the litter box while we've been in transit. I once tried to bring him to one of those pet relief rooms at the airports. If you've ever seen the sign for those, it was the foulest smelling thing I've experienced in my life. Oh my gosh, if you think you've smelled something disgusting, you have not until you've gone into one of those pet relief rooms. And so my Rihanna's looking at me like, yes.
I did the same thing with all
so
dogs, and I was like,
it was the grossest thing. And so I set up the litter box in there, and my cat just looked at me like, you have to be kidding me. I will have a bladder infection before I go to the bathroom in here. So he just held it. But anyone else, have you had experience of having your cats go to the bathroom while you've been traveling either on the airplane or at the airport?
so I did what Jenny did, and I went into the pet room and realized there were just dogs everywhere. And I was like, we are not going to hang out in here. So what I do, I don't even know if you can do this, but I do it anyway. Also, if I'm going to the bathroom, I do this in general. I go into the family rooms because they're the ones where the door goes all the way to the floor and it's private. So like, it's a 1-person bathroom. So I'll go in there, and if they need to go to the bathroom, I give them like a chance. I also go take off their like thunder shirts and switch their harnesses and all that in there. But it's just a little bit more of a secure environment because they can't get under the door or anything like that to leave. So that's their opportunity to go to the bathroom if they want. But mine have never gone to the bathroom again. I just kind of like withhold too much water and food before the flight, and then they just hold it until we're either in the car on our way, and there's usually a litter box there, or at our destination.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we've gotten a few more questions, but we're unfortunately running out of time. But I know for a fact, all of our panelists and myself included are happy to answer any of your questions. So feel free to give us a follow on Instagram and ping us with additional questions that you might have. And we'd love to help encourage you to fly with your cat, plan a hotel stay with them. I saw someone ask, how much does it cost to fly with your cat? And that depends on the airlines. Usually I've seen between at the very lowest end, $50 US, and I've paid upwards of $200 for one way with my cat on Delta. Boo! I love Delta, but not their pet fees. So it really ranges on the airline, and I've definitely chosen one airline over another because of the pet fees. So always look on the website. Thank you everyone for joining us. This was so fun. I hope, I'm sure all of us hope we can further connect on Instagram, and stay tuned for our next session.